So welcome to week 7 of the Ray of Hope crochet along, and this week we're making another one of our triangular rays, and this one has the waistcoat stitch in it. So the waistcoat stitch is a single crochet stitch. Be using a 3.5mm hook, and we're going to start with a foundation chain of 22. Okay, so in the 4th chain from your hook, make a double crochet. So your turning chain counts as your first double crochet. So the double crochet we just made is your 2nd stitch. And then just double crochet in every stitch across. Okay, so we'll end up with 20 double crochet. Or 20 stitches including the turning chain. Oops, split the yarn there. So the waistcoat stitch, it creates this lovely V look, and it's sometimes called the knitting stitch as it gives the piece a bit of a knitted look, and it just looks like a series of V stitches, little tiny V's. The waistcoat stitch, it can be done in the round as well, and it gives a slightly different look. If you do it in the round, it looks neater, it looks a lot more symmetrical. Doing it in rows, you still get the V look, but it's slightly offset, so it kind of looks a bit skewish sometimes. But it's still it's a very pretty stitch. But if you're going to be using it for any big project, then I definitely recommend doing it in chunky yarn, because it can be a bit of a tedious stitch. But doing it in small batches like this is going to make it much easier to have a go and get the hang of it. Okay, so 2 more. One. And last stitch in the row. And that's row 1. Now we're going to turn and make the alternate turning chain in your first stitch. You're going to start the alternate turning chain, leave the last 2 loops on your hook, and then we decrease. Okay. There's a link in the description so if you want a close-up of how I'm doing this. So that's our decrease there, and we're going to double crochet in each stitch in the row until we get to our last 2 stitches. Okay, and then in row 3 we're going to start the waistcoat stitch. Okay, so on row 2, once you've done your decreases at either end, you'll have 18 stitches in this row. I do like these rays, they do work out nice and quick because you're decreasing so often. Almost there. Right, one more. And then we do our decrease. So double crochet 2 together over your last 2 stitches. 2. So start my double crochet, leave the last 2 loops on your hook, then into the top of that turning chain, and over, pull through your first 2 stitches, leave 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and there is your decrease. Okay, so we're at the end of row 2, and now we need to set up ready for the waistcoat stitch. And the way we do that is when we turn, we chain 1 and in the first stitch you're going to make a single crochet. Keep your single crochet loose. This is really important for when we're making the waistcoat stitch, because we're not going to be working into the loops. We're going to be working into this upside down V shape here. So in every stitch in row 3, just make a single crochet, but really keep your tension loose. It will make life a lot easier when we get to the next row. Okay, so you should have 18 stitches in this row. Okay, so the waistcoat stitch is a single crochet stitch, but don't worry, we're not making the entire array after this in single crochet. We're just going to do 2 blocks of it, just so you can see how the stitch is made. So unless you're doing this in chunky yarn, it really does become tedious as a stitch. Okay, so just getting to the end of the row. That's 2. Right, so now we're going to turn, chain 1, and we're going to start our waistcoat stitches. I'll just take that stitch marker out. So we're going to make them in the upside down V in between the stitches. It's just here. And all you do is go into that V, push your hook through, pull through, and make a single crochet. And again, keep your tension loose. And we're just going to do that in every stitch across. So by the time you get to the end of row 4, you should have 18 stitches just in the middle of that V. Okay, I realise you can't see it that well with this camera angle, so I'm going to show you a close-up of how we do it in a chunkier yarn. Okay, so let's get a close-up of the waistcoat stitch. So I've done my row of single crochet. Now we need to make a waistcoat. So the first stitch is going to go in here. See this upside down V? Got one stitch, leg of it there, one leg of it there. And we're going straight through the middle of that V. Push through the other side, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. It's a single crochet, except instead of making it through the top loops, you're going through that V. Okay, so the next V, right there, push through, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. And it will begin to look like just V's going all the way across, V's stacked on top of each other. To make life easy to get through those upside down V's, keep your tension loose. If you don't keep your tension loose, you're really going to struggle to get in between those V's. And you see on the other side, upside down V's, sitting on top of the upside down V's, the single crochet in the row below. So the first row of single crochet V's will look a bit scraggly, then they'll start to neaten up as we go up the rows. And that's all there is to the waistcoat stitch. Okay, so I got to the stitch before the last one and I've got 17 stitches. Your final stitch, I'll just take that out, it goes just in the last turning chain. If you're feeling adventurous, you can get it in between those 2 strands, or you can just make a normal single crochet. It won't affect the final look for things. And that is your first row of waistcoat stitch. You can see the V's are sitting in between, so you've got V sitting in a V. Because we're doing it in rows, they are going to be slightly offset. If you did the waistcoat stitch in the round, they would all sit perfectly on top of each other in a straight line. But in rows, it doesn't look perfectly straight. So now we're going to turn, chain 1, and we're going to do exactly the same again. Okay, a row of V stitches. Where's my first V? It's there. And into there. So exactly the same. Just a row of V's. Okay, so it does look a bit like knit stitch. Okay, and that's the other name for the waistcoat stitch actually, is the knit stitch. Where's my stitch marker? There it is. Just pop that in there. Okay, so we're on row 1, 2, 3, 4, row 5. Okay, so we're going to repeat this for rows 6, 7 and 8. So you'll have 5 rows of V-stitch. Okay, and they're all exactly the same. No difference. You just get to the end of the row, you turn, chain 1 and start another V-stitch, and you'll have 18 stitches in each row. Okay, so I shall carry on with this and I shall see you when I get to the end of row 8. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 8 and I've got 5 rows of waistcoat stitch. So you can see it works up, makes these lovely little V's, and it's quite a tight stitch. There's really not much give in there, but it's pretty. If a bit of a pain because it's single crochet. Okay, so row 9. So row 9 is a decrease row, and we're going back to double crochet. So chain 1, and in your first stitch make the alternate turning chain 2 together. Leave the last 2 loops on my hook, into the next stitch, pull through the first 2 loops, then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Okay, so decrease done. Okay, so we're going down from 18 stitches to 16, and then just double crochet in each stitch across. Okay. So when we get to the end of the row, in the last 2 stitches we're going to do double crochet 2 together, and that will bring us down to 16 stitches. So after this, the next 3 rows are all double crochet, and there's going to be 16 stitches in each row. Okay, so after that we go back to a section of waistcoat stitch. There's only 2 sections of waistcoat stitch in this row. It's not, hopefully not too overly tedious. It's a great looking stitch, it's just I wouldn't do it with anything but chunky yarn unless you're doing small sections like this. It just get incredibly, takes a long time to get any kind of length out of it. Right, so double crochet 2 together over the last 2 stitches. So into the first 2 loops and into the second. Okay, so there's our decrease. Okay, so on to row 10. So rows 10, 11 and 12 are all the same. Turn, chain 1 and make the alternate turning chain in the first stitch. And then just double crochet in each stitch across. Then you're going to have 16 stitches. So I will finish this and I will see you back at the end of row 12, and then we'll get ready for another row of waistcoat stitch. Okay, so row 13. I said we're going to start a waistcoat stitch row, but that's not true because we've got to do a decrease row first. So row 13, we're going to make the alternate turning chain 2 together. Okay. Leave 2 loops on your hook, into the next stitch, through 2 and then through 3. And we're going to decrease when we get to the other end as well. So row 14 is going to be the setup row. We do a row single crochet, and then rows 15 to 20 will be waistcoat stitches again. So we'll do exactly the same as we did for the section below. Make them all those nice little V's. But just remember, keep your tension loose. Otherwise life gets very, very difficult. Trying to get through those waistcoat stitches, those V's, upside down V's, when you've got tight tension is just horrid. So you really do need loose tension. There we go. And over the last 2 stitches, double crochet 2 together. And turn. So chain 1 and single crochet loosely. I really can't stress enough about keeping your tension loose for this one. Otherwise it really does just become a nightmare. Can you tell I made that mistake? I had to end up frogging row with the stuff just to... I realised just how difficult I was making life for myself. Okay, and just single crochet across. So this is row 14. Row 15 will be waistcoat up until row 20. Okay. Nice and loose. So you should have 14 stitches along this row. Okay, so this section of waistcoat stitches will all have 14 stitches in each row. So turn, chain 1 and into the first V, which is there. So it feels like you are skipping this first stitch, but it's made up by making your final stitch in that turning chain, so you still have 14 stitches at the end of the row. And just push through there. So exactly the same as we did before. So I will carry on with this section. I've got my second section of waistcoat. So from here on in it's all double crochet again, and we're going to be doing exactly the same as we did for week 5. Okay, so our next row is a decrease row again. So in double crochet, so we start with the alternate turning chain 2 together and into there. So we're going to be decreasing down to 12 stitches in this row, and then we'll be doing 3 rows of double crochet, no decreases, and then another row, decrease row. So the pattern is decrease row, 3 rows of double crochet, just 1 in every stitch, decrease row, 3 rows of double crochet, all the way to the end. Okay, so I finished our row. We got our nice 2 sections of waistcoat stitch, and I've gone all the way up to the point. Okay, so now we need to add our slip stitch border. We're going to add it on in exactly the same way as we did for week 5. So into the side of every double crochet you're going to make 2 slip stitches. In the side of every waistcoat row you're going to make 1 slip stitch. Okay. Then when we get to the point, make 2 slip stitches on one side at the very point of it, but when you turn and do the other side just do 1 stitch on that row, but then carry on with 2 slip stitches on the side of every other double crochet. Okay, and then just 1 slip stitch across the bottom. So you should have 78 slip stitches down one side, 77 down the other. That's because of the only 1 slip stitch at the point. And you'll have 20 across the bottom here. And then we're going to join it to week 7. No, this is week 7. You're going to join it to week 6, losing track, and you'll join week 6 the bottom edge, and then you'll be joining this side of your array. So it's going to be that way around. And this side of your array to the week 6 and onto the mandala. Okay. So there is a link in the description to this video to where the joining video is, if you need to have a little refresher. And I shall see you next week for week 8. Bye for now.